Greetings, everybody. Greetings, extreme travelers from around the world. I am Rick Gazarian, your host for this great conversation. In the comment section, if you can, please check in, chime in. Tell me if you can hear and see me okay. Tell me where you are listening from. We'd love to see who is with us this evening, or evening for me. It's 1 minute past midnight in Bangkok. So I'm hoping to hear from everybody. Where are you calling from? I see we have Jack Goldstein. I'm going to guess he's in Colombia. And again, if you can just check in with me, if you can hear the audio okay. And I'm very excited to bring in our two guests for this great conversation that we'll be having shortly. Oh, and we have Scott Lang chiming in from Scotland. So great to see you there. We have someone Cab 715 from Pittsburgh. And I'm guessing and it sounds like the audio is working great. So I'm going to officially get us going for this great conversation. Hey, now I am your host, Rick Gazarian. You might know me from my podcast, Counting Countries, or the Extraordinary Travel Festival. And today I have the privilege of hosting this conversation today with two of the most influential travelers in the extreme travel community. Many of you know them, but nonetheless, I will let them introduce themselves in a moment. A couple of housekeeping issues. First, this conversation will be recorded, so you'll be able to listen to the replay at your convenience right here on YouTube. And if you have questions, we want to know them, and you can simply write them in the comment section on YouTube. At the end of our conversation, we will be bringing some of those conversations and questions to both Harry and Charles. We're targeting around 1 hour for this conversation, and I am very excited to introduce our first guest, Charles Veley. If you can join me for a moment and take a moment to say hi and introduce yourself.
Hey, Rick. Hello, everybody. I'm Charles Veley, coming to you from San Francisco, California, in the U.S. I'm the founder of Most Traveled People, or otherwise known as MTP. Let's see if I can. MTP.
Looking good.
And I'm happy to be here. So MTP was founded in 2005. We have about 30,000 members from all around the world. And we are happy we're going to be hosting a summit in June. We can talk more about that later, but I'll get back to you, Rick.
Okay, thanks for that intro, Charles. And Harry, why don't you come on for a moment and say hi to everybody?
Well, hello, I'm Harry Mitsidis. I'm logging in from Athens, Greece. Actually, the flat where I grew up, my parents' flat. And I'm here because my dad celebrated his 88th birthday a couple of days ago. So, you don't want to miss these. I am the founder of NomadMania, which was initially founded as the best traveled back in 2012. And yeah, it's really great to have this chat and this opportunity from Athens to the world. So on to Uric.
Okay, guys. So, I mean, I don't know which one you're better known for. I mean, you're both equally well known for two things. One being extremely well-traveled people, and second, for founding both of your respective travel clubs. So I just want to take a quick dive into each one of these clubs for a moment. We'll go back to you, Charles. Tell us a little bit, Most Traveled People. How did it get started? When did it get started? What the major objective and goal of the platform is?
Sure. So, most of my really extreme travel was done back in the 2000s. A little bit difference between myself and Harry is I have kids, and they started being born in 2003. So that had to shift my focus a little bit. But that's when I was really going for it, and that's when I started studying the list. I was following the Traveler Century Club. And I wound up being able to complete the Traveler Century Club list at the time. And then I found out that the Guinness Book of World Records had a different list, which they had used up until the year 2000. There was another list from the ham radio community. There were other lists out there that people were just sort of using as they liked. And there was a lot of hearsay about who had done what. And so I had come from a software background, and I wanted to just put something online that had a database of people and places. And so that's really was the start of Most Traveled People. And the list at that time was 573 locations, because what I did was I just took all the other lists and reconciled them. And when you added them up together, it was 573. Since then, over time, it has grown. Most recently, and one of the reasons for this talk is that we have adopted NomadMania's fine work and brought that inside of MTP so that people won't have to go back and forth between the two. And now the MTP list is 1,500 regions.
Okay, so Charles, you are describing a lot of travel dreams with 1,500 locations. So that's a lot of work for everybody to pursue. Harry, as you just said, your platform started off as the best traveled and then transitioned to NomadMania. But talk to us a little bit about the history, when that was started, the inspiration, the objectives of the platform.
Right. Well, as you probably know, I'm an avid traveler as well, and I finished all the world countries in 2008. Before I continue, let me apologize for my voice. This is not my usual speaking voice, but I've had bronchitis all week, so it's much better today. Anyway, so I did all the countries in 2008, and I was on MTP. I was an avid fan of MTP. I discovered the list, and I was like, wow, this is a great list. But then at one point, I think MTP stagnated a bit. There wasn't very much happening there. And I also wasn't entirely happy at the fact that Switzerland had 26 regions and Congo had only one. And I thought we need to create a list which makes sense, which is rational and divides countries based on their overall worth relative to themselves and to each other. And I found Artur Anusewski from Poland, whom I still haven't met in person. And we built this list, which initially had 1,281 regions. And then I thought, well, for this list to become globally accepted, it needs to become a website. And that is when The Best Traveled was launched in 2012. 5 years later, we rebranded as NomadMania. And despite the fact that initially people were shocked and scandalized about the name, I would say that now everyone has accepted it. And it's actually quite a cool name if you think about it. Now we have 1,301 regions in our main list, and we have a secondary list also with 1,301 quirky places. That is what I like to call the crazy list. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Thank you, Charles, for those great overviews of your platforms. Both of them are incredible resources in my book, and I have profiles on each one of them. There was just a great event recently, and both of you were together at this event in the Philippines. This was a joint production, from my understanding, of Most Traveled People and the Philippine Global Explorers. And I unfortunately was not able to go, but I saw a lot of great pictures of the two of you enjoying this event. And I guess they don't want to leave out ETIC. So Extreme Travelers International Congress was also one of the organizers of the event. I'll turn it over to you, Charles, as one of the co-organizers of the event. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to hear some of your input, Harry, after that.
Sure. Yeah. So this was a trip to Bangsamoro, which many people don't know. That is the autonomous Muslim region of the Philippines. And most recently, it had been known 5 to 10 years ago, really for terrorism, for the Abu Sayyaf group, and as a very dangerous place to go. But it has a rich history beyond that. And the circumstances there have changed quite a bit, as Harry will attest to. And so it's actually a beautiful region with beautiful blue water, white beaches, and rich in culture. Jolo on the island of Sulu is the head of the Sultanate. So the Sultan of Sulu at one time was just as big or bigger than the Sultan of Brunei. and so that it's really a worthwhile destination. Now, of course, this wasn't some place that I would be able to just organize myself. My good friend Ariz Rasco, who is the founder of the Philippine Global Explorers, had the idea initially to and had some contacts to be able to develop those to organize an actual trip. She and I went ahead. It was her birthday a year ago, so March 16th, a year ago, and we had the full support of the military, and we found that it was a very wonderful and welcoming place. And so and they wanted to transition into tourism and show the world that it's a great place. So we had the idea that I would bring people from Most Traveled People, bring people from the extreme travel community. And so we wound up doing that recently. And we brought 18 extreme travelers. Kolya who runs the group ETIC, had Bangsamoro on his radar for a long time. And so he participated as well as an organizer. And there were some challenges. Maybe Harry can tell some stories, but I think it was all in all a success, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, well, I heard great feedback for the individuals who came out for this great adventure. And maybe at first glance, when you look at the organizers, MTP, Filipino Global Explorers, and ETIC, Harry, you were not one of the organizers, but regardless, you still participated. You came to this event with your peers. What brought you out for this adventure?
Well, it was great to finally just be a participant and not have to worry about anything, because as you know, NomadMania often has its own trips. And if I'm there, I'm always worried and concerned that everyone is having a good time. So this was one trip where I could just relax and enjoy the ride. I was invited to go, and the minute I saw it, I'm like, I'm not missing this one. So yeah, the itinerary itself was very enticing. Initially, we were meant to fly to Hello, and it seemed quite easy. Like, oh, we'll fly in, we'll have our thing, we'll fly out. It's nice and comfy. But ultimately, the flights to Hello were all canceled, and so we all had to endure 2 night crossings, one going, one coming back on a ferry. But ultimately, that was a gift, traveling with the locals, experiencing that atmosphere of traveling, with people. And obviously, we were the only foreigners, and everyone was super curious. We were really treated like royalty there. I would say both the Filipino military, the governor took us in. It was really exciting. And I think they think that now many people will be going there, that this is going to start a trend. And I kept on wanting to tell them, we are probably outliers here. The trip did include a side trip to Tawi-Tawi. And for me, this was especially interesting because we went to Sitangay, which is on our second list of crazy places because it is the southernmost area in the Philippines. Sitangay is known as the Venice of the South. It's got canals and stuff. So that was great. It was really difficult to approach it because we were there at low tide. And ultimately, we basically had to squat on a tiny pirogue and try to be pushed there. But we made it. And I really think it was an unforgettable trip.
I'll add a couple things if that's all right, Rick.
Of course.
Now we're getting into the juicy details. Harry and I both did karaoke in Sitangay. That was one thing. I don't think it's available publicly, but we did. I would also say that, yes, I experienced the part where I had to worry about everything as we went. And when Riza and I had gone the year before, we did just fly. And in fact, we limited the numbers based on the capacity of the aircraft. So that's why the trip was a little bit smaller. It turned out to be a very good number. But we had intended to fly, and that would have been very easy. But the aircraft was grounded. The single aircraft that serviced Hello was grounded 2 months before the trip. So the backup was a fast ferry that would have gone during the day, and then that service was canceled 2 weeks before the trip. So we were down to the night ferry, and I tried everything I could to get some other means of transport, because it meant that people were flying in from around the world and arriving and then having a tour in Zamboanga and then having to get straight on the night ferry. So really not getting any sleep. But of course, these are some of the best travelers, and they adapted. And we had to be fingerprinted because the Coast Guard pulled us off the boat. They hadn't done their due diligence, and so it took a while. But all of these delays and the overnight ferry did turn into a blessing, as Harry had mentioned, for another reason, and that is because instead of arriving into Holo Harbor at 4 or 5 a.m., which is when it was scheduled, we arrived in at 7:30. So after dawn. And we had this beautiful sunrise scene with the mosque, the main central mosque, rising out of the mist, and all of the boats surrounding us with the children and the merchants. And it was really a magical scene, and we would not have had that if we had been on time.
Well, that's the serendipity of travel. Now, for people who don't know the two of you personally, there might be some confusion. Are you guys
I look like this and he looks like that.
Exactly. Two handsome individuals. But for those who don't know you well, they might wonder, are they competitors? Are they frenemies? Are they best friends? Do they travel all the time together? But what I'm getting at is there is a genuine friendship here, and there's a long history of you guys collaborating together as well as traveling together. So I always love to hear great anecdotes. Maybe, Harry, do you have a travel anecdote of being on the road with Charles?
Well, I think the iconic moment is the one where we first met. So until then, for me, Charles was a mystery. You know, he was the founder of this MTP, who was kind of untouchable at the time. Charles was ranked #1 on MTP, most traveled man back then, you know, and I think not only me, but many of us were in awe, you know, who is this man? And then there was this ETIC event in Liberland, which is, well, we met in Serbia trying to get to Liberland, where
near Liberland
never got. We might have got to the waters of Liberland. We can't be sure. But anyway, there was an attempt to get to Liberland organized by ETIC, and there were very many travelers at this event. It was a bit of a who's who of the travel community. And so that was the first time that Charles and I actually met. And the legend, who is Don Parrish, has this famous photograph taken of where we first greet each other, you know, and that kind of iconic moment. So Don always shows this photograph proudly, because he's one of the people who loves both the clubs, I would say, equally. And so there he is showing this and saying, I was there.
Right. I wish we had that photo on hand. I'm sure we'll dig it up later, but it's sort of Harry and I are this tall, and then Don Parrish in the middle is this tall with his beard hanging down. It's a great photo. And yeah, we sort of stayed on a flatbed boat all day with music and beer, watching the president of Liberland jet ski around and cavort with models and try to evade the Croatian police.
The Croatians were not happy at all, and they were there with loudspeakers trying to boo us and shoo us away. It was so funny.
And machine guns, and he had just given a PowerPoint presentation asking us to invest with Bitcoin into Liberland, and said the relations are going really well with Croatia. And then we showed up with these guys with the machine guns. It didn't. He sort of lost a little bit of credibility there. In his 3-piece suit. Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, it was a fun event for sure.
Yeah, and this adventure of yours it's a fable. It's a travel fable, which I've heard about. As a little added note, Liberland is a de facto country. I think it's only several square miles between Croatia and Serbia.
No.
Bigger?
Smaller.
Oh, okay, smaller. So we're talking one of those great geographical oddities, which we all love to talk about.
that is also where the William Bakeland saga really exploded, actually. So while we were on that boat, all this backstory was kind of coming to life as well. So that added to the mystery of that trip, kind of. Yeah.
Well, a truly memorable trip. And great to hear about that first meeting. Charles, do you have a memory of maybe another trip that the two of you crossed paths on?
Yeah, there was a time just a few years ago, and I was driving around Europe, actually chasing some NomadMania regions that I didn't have. So I should just take a break and say, I love the NomadMania regions, and when I first got in and started having the ability to travel a bit more again, and I saw these holes in my map, and I said, well, I've got to go around, especially in North America. I mean, that's so shameful. So I set about to correct many of those gaps, and I was driving around Europe, and there were a few things in the Balkans that were places I hadn't been, and so Harry was around, and he said, "Oh, let's meet in the mountains in Montenegro," and we did meet. We met for a lunch dinner at a tavern in the mountains, and there was a friend of his there. We had a typical cuisine. We hung out, and really we enjoyed the conversation. I had sort of been driving all night and was pretty exhausted, but Harry helped me find a hotel. It was in the ski town, and it turns out that the next day is one of the most memorable and beautiful drives that I had ever had on a road going from that town into Bosnia and Herzegovina. From the border of Montenegro. So that was a really excellent find, and it was overall a great experience.
Yeah, that town was Žabljak, if you know the geography. So it's high in the mountains in the northern Montenegro region. And yeah, it used to have an airport served by DC-3s, but not anymore.
Well, it sounds like another place I have to add to my never-ending bucket list. So let's be candid. February of last year was a pretty traumatic time around the entire globe when Russia attacked Ukraine. And I think it's safe to say that both you, Harry, and both you, Charles, we all kind of view Russia as the aggressor in this global conflict that's taking place. But there was also a schism in our philosophy, or the philosophies of both platforms, where one platform was still saying, we travel everywhere, we go everywhere. And NomadMania was saying, this is a different situation. We have to reevaluate traveling to Russia and supporting them. So I want to kind of peel back this onion a little bit to understand both of your philosophies at the time of the initial attack and during the past year. And those positions have changed a little bit. So we'll get into that as well. So Charles, if you can give us a brief overview of where MTP stands on traveling to Russia/Belarus. Sure.
So at the time, and I personally feel, much of the community feels that Russia was the aggressor in the war, and so we have a stance against the war. And we published that very early on. However, we don't feel that that has anything to do with the individuals, with travelers from Russia. It has very little to do with anyone really besides Vladimir Putin and some of the people that have to follow his orders. So that's our point of view on the war, and it really doesn't have much to do with top travelers. I know many just absolutely wonderful people, some of my favorite people in the world that are travelers from Russia. I've had some of my best experiences traveling through Russia. I love the Russian people. I love the Russian countryside. I think that it's a travesty what's happening, and that Russia as a whole is being unfairly painted. But so I wanted to draw that distinction on behalf of MTP, that we welcome people from Russia and we welcome people to travel to Russia.
Okay, great to hear, and thanks for giving that overview. Harry, you had a bit of a different perspective. So what was going through your mind February of 2022 to, and what took place on the platform?
Right. Well, dark moments indeed, and they're still there. I mean, I don't think much has changed since then. You know, we think we're getting used to it, but I'm sure the people there are not. So, in order to understand NomadMania's stand, I think I need to go back to the philosophy of NomadMania. So, from the very beginning, NomadMania has wanted to be very inclusive. We have always answered users' emails. We have always tried to communicate to our travelers. We've always encouraged events. And through that, that means we really know, well, if not all, we'd like to, but definitely we know many of the people. I would say by accident, perhaps, I met Orest Zub, who is a famous blogger from Ukraine, and he took a very personal interest in NomadMania. And the first ever country travel event that was held in NomadMania's name was held in Lviv in 2019. And very many people from the Ukrainian travel community met. And I remember them debating our division of Ukraine, and they actually had to vote. They begged for an extra region. I said, no, you cannot have an extra region. This is how many Ukraine gets. And I would say it's the only example of an exercise in democratic division in NomadMania by the people of the country themselves. So with all this background, when the invasion happened, I felt that one of our tasks is to protect our friends in Ukraine. And that was more than just say, oh, this is really bad. This, you know, words, we are deeply concerned kind of message. We wanted to go a step further. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding because we never touched travelers from Russia. Quite the contrary. We always have welcomed them. And in fact, we have more travelers from Russia on NomadMania than any other country. So we have always welcomed Russian travelers, and they stayed on. I mean, most of them did. What we didn't want, and I believe they are not part of our community, were people who supported this invasion. You know, I don't believe that people with that kind of ideology belong on NomadMania. And I think that is where things got a bit you know, problematic perhaps. We thought that going to Russia sends a very wrong message. It sends a message that it's okay. And Russia is a great country. Let me make this clear. I've been to every administrative division. I love Russia and its history and its culture. But at the current time, there are 190 other countries you can choose. The world is big, and maybe it's a better idea to go there rather than Russia right now. Things got to a head a few months later when we blocked a dear friend of mine because he had been to Russia. And that's when we had a referendum. Now, in the referendum, we didn't ask whether it's okay to go to Russia or not. What we asked is whether it's okay for NomadMania to decide if we block people that go to Russia or not. And the majority spoke. And I will say that here, I think the majority reminded us of who we are. And so I'm grateful for that. They reminded us that NomadMania's role is to be inclusive, it is to be diverse, it is to inspire people to travel, and it is not here to tell people where to go. And ultimately, the traveler can decide where to go. And so we reversed that policy. We do not block people who go to Russia, but I'm still quite happy that we encourage this debate and we made people think about it. I think it is important for people to think, what is responsible travel? And as communities, we have the obligation to promote responsible travel. And somewhere there is a line. This line is very difficult to define, but there is a line beyond which you are no longer being a responsible traveler. And that is open for debate. These moral questions are very difficult to answer. Mm-hmm. So I thank the community for getting involved, and we go on from that.
Great. Harry, thank you so much for taking the time to clarifying that situation and explaining where the community is standing today in regards to NomadMania's perspective on traveling to Russia. So that's a big help that you're able to share that information. So let's go back to talking about collaboration for a moment. The way I look at it, we have two great teams with two great platforms, giving travelers in the extreme travel community more and more resources. So, of course, there's a little bit of competitiveness. You're both proud of what you've created, and you want to provide great information and great resources to the community, but you're also collaborating. Charles, let's go to you for a moment. You mentioned, I think, at the beginning of the conversation, how you did a major overhaul of the regions, and you are now working in some ways more closely with NomadMania. So why don't you touch on the collaboration of your platform with the NomadMania platform?
Yeah, sure. As I just mentioned, NomadMania regions are good things, and in fact, I would have tried, or I would have incorporated all of them sooner. As I said, the genesis of Most Traveled People was to be the kind of Uber list of other people's lists, so that there wouldn't be this kind of debate about lists. I had started with a democratic process, which Harry just mentioned the difficulties with that, and that's how we got to dividing Switzerland by, but not dividing the Congo, for example. Mm-hmm. Was because that's what the users voted in their own self-interest, and there were a lot more users from Europe than there were from the Congo, and so they thought, I'll get 23 new points by just dividing Switzerland, and I won't divide Congo. So democracy is not always the right answer. A great traveler, Alan Hogenauer, at the time said, "Please, Charles, can't we just have a benign dictator?" Which I remember, and I was torn about that at the time. But in any case, I really wanted to involve these regions earlier, but it would have been so disruptive, and it would have displaced some of the top people. For example, Don Parrish, who have been really working only with the existing MTP regions. So for several years, we added 4 countries at a time, the largest countries by area. So that Congo came in with one of those batches, and we were trying to do a gradual thing, but the map was still unbalanced, and so this year we just decided to go for it, and so it's a lot of work also. So drawing all those lines is a lot of work, as Harry and his team will attest. But we were able to bring it in. It all seems to be working pretty well, and now people can. If you've done something on NomadMania, you can go over to MTP and it will be the same. You don't have to actually pursue 2 different agendas. So we're happy about that. And as I said, I had been chasing them myself, so I had never been against the divisions. It's just been more of a technical issue in terms of being able to incorporate them.
And Charles, you touched on it for a moment. Out of curiosity, did you hear any feedback from some of the top listed people who might have moved down after you added in all the additional regions? Any pushback?
Well, I think, there's a little bit of disappointment, but I think we had signaled enough in advance that we were going to be doing this. We actually had announced that I did a presentation at your wonderful event in Armenia last year. And so I think people knew that it was coming. And also, most of those people had been on both platforms anyway, so they sort of had been doing both and were prepared. And then finally, for those people that were in the top 10, so we took a snapshot of the top 10 the day, not the day the music died, but the day that we changed the list had adapted so much. We took a snapshot and we said these are the all-time greats from the original MTP list, and here's a shrine to them, and we hold that in a prominent place on the website.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you are honoring their accomplishments. And Harry, I know as well from your platform, I mean, you've incorporated MTP in addition to TCC, etc. So talk a little bit how you are incorporating some of the great things about MTP on the NomadMania platform.
Okay, well, there's a slight difference in how we did it and how MTP did it. So Once we launched in 2012, initially we only had our own list. Then we had the UN list, the UN Plus. Gradually, we wanted to incorporate more lists. And if I remember well, one of the first big lists we incorporated was Jeff Shea's, which is called CISO, and that incorporates all administrative divisions as they were in 2003. So we're talking about I don't even remember, 4,000 regions or something. It's a huge list. So we incorporated that with Jeff's kind permission. And then I wanted to incorporate the MTP list. So I contacted Charles. I think this was at the start of 2018. And Charles was very happy. He's like, sure, Harry, I'm fine with that. Go ahead. So we did that. And again, it was quite a lot of work because we needed to kind of connect the NomadMania regions with the MTP regions. But ultimately what happens on NomadMania is that you can see your MTP score. We have an MTP column and the score, and you get it there. And, it's always clearly marked. That is the MTP list. Now, what MTP did, however, is they took the NomadMania regions, but they incorporated them into their main list. So now their main list is composed of many NomadMania regions, but you can't actually see a NomadMania score because now it's part of the overall 1,500 regions. So that is a big difference in how NomadMania has approached it compared to MTP. MTP has promised that NomadMania will get credit on the site where the regions are of NomadMania origin. And I'm sure that they're going to deliver on that so that it's clear to people that those regions were devised. And let me just say that while some of them are quite obvious because they're just administrative regions of a country, in some cases, we had a lot of work, even with people involved. Jack Goldstein of Colombia is the one who divided Colombia. And I remember he was going through the map and drawing lines and then contacting our programmer who had to kind of draw the line. So, this was a long, laborious process, which took a lot of resources. So, none of this comes easy. And I think both Charles and I know that this is hard, and I hope the communities appreciate this.
Yeah, well, I would add that probably this process has brought us closer, Harry. But I had a call, I think I had the same questions about Colombia, for example, as we were going through this. I thought, this looks very different from Google Maps or from Wikipedia. Harry, are you sure this is right? He said, go talk to Jack. And I had about an hour conversation with Jack about how these regions are better than Wikipedia and why he put them as he did. And so we're all aligned.
Well, obviously, local expertise is always better, and we have always welcomed local input if some divisions are culturally or geographically more appropriate. So, if you don't like how your country is divided, please let us know.
Okay, everybody, you heard from the leaders. Start emailing them immediately with your comments of how your home country needs to be reapportioned. You guys are obviously also collaborating in other different manners as well. One of my favorite events during the year is in November, and that's the NomadMania Travel Award. So touch on that, Harry. I mean, that is a real community effort, and it's involving your travel buddy, Charles. So talk to us how you guys are collaborating beyond the platforms.
Well, we came up with the awards 2 years ago in 2021, and I think they were largely a result of COVID. Everyone had been indoors so much, and we wanted an event where people can come together safe and, celebrate something. And obviously in those first awards, I wanted to get everyone involved. And, you can't have an event without Charles. So Charles was very happy to head one of the panels. And, obviously in that, he represented MTP. We continued last year, Charles was flying to Australia, I believe, during the awards. So, I mean, he was initially on board, but then he wrote to me and said, I can't make it. So ultimately, Gina Morello, who had also won the Best Traveler Award the year before, but was then on the MTP board, she agreed to represent MTP, and she also headed a panel which gave out an award. We are very excited about this year. We believe we're going to be able to have the awards live, not virtual. We're still working out some details, so we will come up with an announcement soon enough of where, when, and whatever. But obviously, we will again be inviting everybody, and that obviously means we will be inviting an MTP delegation. And I hope Charles is the one to lead that delegation to the NomadMania Awards.
And Harry, will that be a black tie event? I mean, you're bringing out the best and the brightest. It's the Oscars of the travel community.
Black T-shirt, Rick.
Even better, even better. We touched on this earlier. I mean, Charles, you are organizing MTP events and trips, and again, the collaboration here. You welcome everybody. You're agnostic. I mean, case in point, the leader and founder of NomadMania is joining you on some of your trips. So if you can just touch on some further collaboration between the two travel groups.
Yeah. So first of all, I would apologize again for not showing up to head that group at the NomadMania Awards last time, but a mileage ticket came up and I had to snag it, and so I was in the air, and definitely will be involved in the next one, and we will promote that award show on MTP. But our big event, Rick, and it's related to all of your initiative last year when you announced that you're not going to have a extraordinary travel festival for 2023. It was so popular last year. We thought, well, why can't we do a big get together? And so we discovered this wonderful place in Equatorial Guinea, this capital called Ciudad de la Paz, which is being carved out of the jungle, or it has been for several years. It's a real kind of oddity, and has all of these brilliant Capitol buildings and government buildings, and a five-star hotel that's being run that still ran through COVID. The five-star hotel has 50 villas, which the president built in order to try and attract all 50 presidents in Africa. They haven't been used, but they're set for dinner and dusted every night. So it's this beautiful place which hasn't been used, and it's just one of these freaky travel locations where everyone who is a serious traveler should be interested in. We are having the MTP Summit there from June 21st to the 25th this year at the hotel at Giblojo in Ciudad de la Paz. And we're also featuring a side trip on the 24th to Annabon Island. That's for the first 50 people that sign up. That's just about full right now, but if there is enough interest, we will layer on a second aircraft probably for that. So there'll be 2 full days of conference with wonderful speakers. We're going to try and equal the success that you had with your very well-run event last fall, and have the same kind of spirit of camaraderie, but this time in the jungle setting.
Sounds good. But Charles, isn't the president of Equatorial Guinea missing 4 villas? Shouldn't it be 54 villas?
I can't speak to his construction plans right now. I do think there are parts of the capital city which are not yet built. Perhaps there are 4 villas, or maybe he has a feud with 4 of the other leaders. I don't know really.
Or potentially he's going to be coming out with his own travel platform community where he's only decided that there's 50 sovereign nations in Africa. But
maybe there's many Equatorial Guinean travelers out there, flying for the top 10 spots.
Right. And so I'll just say something else about the country. I won't get into any politics or anything, but the Equatorial Guinean visa has been known to be quite difficult for non-Americans. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to set this there was because we have support from the hotel and, indirectly from the government for the group for visas. And that does have a precedent. It's not just something brand new for us, but they had hosted, if some of you will recall, they had hosted body painting festivals before COVID, and they had the same sort of treatment. So they're releasing a e-visa program. It's launching on April 1st, and so if that works, that's how the visas will be done. And all of our people through the hotel will get their visa. If it's not working, the hotel is committed that they will get visa on arrival for anyone that is registered. So to register, you can just go to mtp.travel. There's a page. You can also get to it through Facebook, through Instagram, through Twitter, and through YouTube. So
Great.
we really hope to see hundreds and hundreds of people there.
Great. Excellent. Wish you good luck on that. We are coming relatively close to the end of our conversation. So if you do have any questions, don't be shy. Add them into the comment section. We'll be getting to those in several minutes. We've spoken a lot about the collaboration and some of the overlap between the two platforms. I'll repeat myself again. I think it's great. We have two teams, two groups of resources providing all of this great additional information to the travel community. Why don't you highlight a couple of unique characteristics or capabilities of each one of your platforms? So Harry, tell us a couple of interesting, unique things that you are doing on NomadMania.
Thanks, Rick. Well, we have just had our 4th NomadMania conference. So for years now, we've been having small meetings of people, up to 30 people. We had a really great time in Bocas del Toro. So I think that is something that makes us unique, because the people really develop bonds and come close to each other. NomadMania is known for its verification of travelers who are ranked highly. In fact, that is why some of the high-ranking members of MTP are not on NomadMania. They have shied away from our verification, I think. So that means that we actually check that they have really been to the places they're claiming, and that gives a credibility both to NomadMania, but to the traveler as well. No one can then ask questions. We also have an extremely diverse executive committee with people from 5 continents, spanning all ages. So I think they embody the values of NomadMania better than ever. So these are some things that I think differentiate NomadMania and make it, unique in its way.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Charles, anything for you to kind of point out about your platform, some unique capabilities?
Yeah, so I would just say that we appreciate all those aspects of NomadMania. I'm from a software background, and so I've tried to kind of push the development side of things early on, and came out first with the apps. So the apps, I think, are quite good at, for example, recognizing where you are and checking you in automatically and giving you notifications if you're near, if not just near the border of a new region, but if you're near a World Heritage Site, or if you're near, we also cover the top restaurants in the world, the top hotels in the world, and other things like golf courses and scuba, where there are different communities that are very interested in those sorts of things. And so we can add lists as we wish, and we've got the technology to, mark them and notify you, and you can turn those segments on and off. If you're not interested in golf, then you're only interested in World Heritage Sites, then you can just have the World Heritage Sites on, get the directions to the next one, and be notified. So we're really into the apps that way, and I'd say that is a feature.
That sounds like a great feature and a powerful feature. So I I was not aware of that one. I do have the app on my phone, but we'll give that a closer look. We've been talking about the robust features that you guys are offering today, which is fantastic. I know both of you have strategic plans of one sort or the other looking forward. Harry, back to you again. What are you thinking, whether it's 6 months out, 1 year out, 2 years out, what's kind of the ongoing vision and goals of the NomadMania platform and community?
We want to get not bigger, but I would say tighter. We want people to really engage. We want to create a community where people really feel they belong and that they're there for a meaning. We have a number of plans. We're going to focus a lot on trips, meetings, and gatherings. Ultimately, that's what travel is all about. A couple of days ago, we announced a unique trip to Libya, which we will be branding as a NomadMania trip. This is one of the directions we'll be going. And of course, we will continue with our awards. I think we are also going to be investing in, I would say, a bit of a scientific aspect of travel. So we want to look at specific themes that are important to travelers and investigate those more. We just are finishing a poll on mental health. If you're on NomadMania and haven't answered it, it's on for another 3 days. And we plan on giving the results of that. Our next poll will be on sustainability and what people feel about that. So we're going to continue in this vein of trying to be this serious club which creates valuable implications for what it means to be a traveler. And of course, as always, we are committed to our lists. We are a one-stop shop. You can get most lists on board, including the MTP list, including the TCC list, and we have many other lists. The other day, we launched one which is called Yes, which looks at how dynamic your travel is. And we're going to launch a couple more with different angles. So we do cater to the geek, in a way, who loves his lists. And of course, we have the series. They're already there. We have almost 60 categories of series, from airports to caves to aquariums to bizarrium. We will research more, make those stronger.
I think that's a great way to say it. Travel geeks. I always am somewhere between impressed and flabbergasted that you have a list for funiculars. So I don't know how you guys came up with that, but I find that extremely impressive. Harry, that trip to Libya sounds amazing. What month will that be in?
It's in September, but due to huge demand, we're probably going to run October and November as well. If you're interested, send me a message now, because there's so much interest that, there's a limit to how many we can run. So, yeah.
Understood. Okay, well, thank you for that overview, and those goals sound great, and just more data, more information, more resources for all of us in the community coming down the pike. Charles, what about you? I mean, and I don't even know if you touched on this. I mean, you spoke about this at the Extraordinary Travel Festival, but there's been a major investment in MTP. I mean, you're really dedicating a lot of resources financially, people-wise. So touch on that for one moment and then talk to us again as well. What's going to be taking place a year out or 2 years out with the MTP platform, the community? What's your vision going forward?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, we've definitely added some people in investment. We're still a small team, but we do have big hopes. And I would say, if you wanted to put a compare contrast on what we're going for versus NomadMania, we're not going to be as much for the geeks, and at the risk of offending probably the entire audience here is the geeks and all the good friends, but MTP was originally founded to just sort of expand the idea that there's a big world out there and there's more geography than probably. And I think that extreme travel or wider travel is bigger than ever. Most people are trying to start with 193, that is all the UN countries. And you learn pretty quickly that that doesn't really cover all that much when you look at it. I take the example of French Polynesia. I visited there at age 19, and I was in Tahiti, and it just didn't make sense. It's the opposite side of the world from France. And so does 193 really cover it? And so lists need to be bigger, and the maps need to be able to reflect that. People need to be encouraged along the path. So that's a long way of saying that we're trying to, give back to the community, but also broaden the community to all of those people that aren't really sure where to go next, and give them some options and some tracks to go to new places. And it may be that you're on the starter track, maybe you're on the 193 track, or maybe that you're passing the 193 track. But we're really we're gonna try and capture the interest of the people worldwide, and expand the base to try and get all these people who are really interested in traveling more. And then I would hope, to collaborate with Harry and rely on some of that detailed work that he's doing about, what constitutes a visit and all the different research findings. I mean, I would say I'm more of a software developer and a business person. Harry's more of he's got an academic background, and so he's really studying things, and I really want to broaden it. And so I think that it's very complementary, and I hope that we are able to leverage each other's strengths and work more together going forward.
Well, that's a very positive note to almost end our conversation. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to jot those down. There is one question for you, Charles, and that is from Nolan Tianco. Will MTP also be incorporating tentative World Heritage sites, islands, cities, airports, roads, bridges, tunnels, castles, etc., into the MTP platform?
Sure. First of all, hey, Nolan, how are you? So you just mentioned a lot of different categories. I would say tentative World Heritage sites, definitely. The list of those is nearly as long as the list of World Heritage sites itself. So just from a technical standpoint, you're adding, thousands of markers. You have to be smart about it, or it will slow down the apps and the sites. I don't think we aspire to match every series on NomadMania, but we have a steering committee who is in charge of adding new lists or deciding which new lists to add. Right now, we're sort of like a snake that just ate a goat, where we're digesting all the changes that we just made to get to 1,500. But any and all of those are, can be on the horizon. I would say probably of those, the tentative World Heritage sites would be the prime target.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody who has joined around the globe for this conversation, and I hope for those who listen later on the replay enjoy this conversation. I want to thank our producer, Orest Zub, who did another amazing job. Of course, I want to thank the two founders of the two best travel clubs in the world who have, honestly, the reality is both of you have dedicated so much time, resources, finances to making these great platforms, which are free to the community. So you cannot be thanked enough. So I'm going to have both of you kind of sign off and, give your final websites you want to remind people of, or social media accounts, so you can briefly remind people of how to stay connected to both of these great resources. Charles?
Sure. So I'll just remind people, MTP Summit, June 21st to 25th in Ciudad de la Paz, Equatorial Guinea. Go to mtp.travel to sign up. You can also get good info on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for Most Traveled People. And we look forward to seeing you there. Oh, hey, thanks. We got a graphic.
Look at that. Okay, guys, put those in your calendar, June 21 to June 25. Check that box. I'll
just mention one more thing logistically, is that people are having trouble finding flights, because usually you have to come in through Malabo in Equatorial Guinea. So again, I mentioned the visas are going to be no problem. We have the ability on our registration to also purchase a round trip ticket from Annobon to Bata and back, because we're going to be on the mainland. And so those coming through Annabon will have to fly. So we do have that ability that can't be purchased directly online. So we're trying to help people with that. And so that's also on the registration.
Great. Awesome. And Harry, where should people be keeping their eyes open to access your great information?
Well, you've got NomadMania.travel, and beyond that, you've got our newsletter, which is published twice a month. That's where we come up with everything that's happening. If you're not reading the newsletter, you should. There is a section at the top of our site where you can access it if it's not in your mailboxes. So what we have coming up are 3 trips in September. We're meeting in Bratislava for the Trans-Danube swim. It's the 10th anniversary. This is in cooperation with our friend Luboš Fellner. I would say it's a must-do. It's going to be great fun. We'll meet the mayor of Bratislava. Then we have the Libya trips, and we are attempting a trip to Armenia with your friend Lucine, Rick. So we want to see more of Armenia because we loved it last year. And to end this, you thanked us, Rick, but we need to thank you, not only for today, but for existing in the community. You know, you are respected and loved by everyone. And, you know, we couldn't do this without you. So thank you for counting countries, and thank you for you.
I totally appreciate that. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Charles. So again, giant thank you to Charles, Harry, our producer, Oris. Thanks for everybody coming to view this event from far corners of the globe. And I'll give a little shout out to myself. You can subscribe to my podcast, Counting Countries, to hear conversations with the world's most traveled, and a very brief update on the Extraordinary Travel Festival. I am spending the next month or so investigating where the next potential site of the event in 2024. So I am working on it. No big details to share, except it's in the process. So signing off. Bye for now. Keep on counting countries. Thank you, everybody.